What's that?
I said, are aliens real?
I think so.
You think so?
I
What?
do. I think
I think
so.
you did a piece on with Julian Dorey about it, correct? Or
I think
or
we did. Yeah,
yeah,
I think we talked a little bit about it, maybe with Andrew Bustamante might have been there too,
yeah.
talking a little bit about aliens and the X Files and the like.
What did you guys say? Like, what's the conclusion?
Well, I mean, I think there's been so here's my 40,000 foot view, right? So what happens with conspiracy theory, right? What is conspiracy theory? Well, here's my opinion. So there's an unknown piece, right? So there's facts of what we know and there's speculation. And when people can't come up with an explanation for factual occurrences, they fill it with their own space. And that's conspiracy theory in a nutshell. Now, there has been, if you watch some of these specials, especially Julian's guest, he had a guy on by the name of James Fox, who I would say is probably the world's one of, if not the world's, most respected and highly sought after UFO slash alien researcher. He's definitely in the top two or three. And his work, and this is like a guy who gave everything up, right? Like he had a good career going. He had things that would help his family, himself on generational wealth. He gave that all up, put his own money in to do this. And here he is as he sits in 2023. The guy is beyond, wealthy, and he's beyond reference, and he's beyond respected in that field. So my thought is always, well, if we have a guy that's like that, and there's got to be some truth to it. And then some of the things that I have read and or been involved in lead me to believe that that's a real situation. There's got to be other life. There's got to be other life in this universe. And
Yeah,
I
universe
don't
is
have
big.
anything. I don't have anything that I can point to that says, yeah, here's my proof. But I sure as hell kind of subscribe to guys like James Fox.
That's
That's
fair.
a pretty evasive answer. So,
Yeah.
but
I have pretty mixed feelings about aliens, whether or not
you
they're
do?
real.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, I can't say for certain that they exist or even what they
Mm-hmm.
are,
Mm-hmm.
because who's to say that they would even exist in the same way that we do,
That's right.
if
Yep.
on Earth. But yeah, I mean, so speaking of Julian Dorey,
Yeah.
and other podcasts you've been on, so how did you guys meet? I've been curious about that.
It's interesting. So I met Julian probably, I would say sometime in 2018, beginning of 2018. Julian worked for Merrill Lynch before he became a podcaster. Really smart. As you know, Julian's a really smart dude, could pretty much do whatever he would want to do. And met him through a mutual friend, and then ultimately went to a little party that he had hosted in New York City, a rooftop, and met some of his buddies. And then just from there, developed a relationship with his dad, who's a big time attorney at Blank Rome. And then, you know, always kind of, I knew Julian always wanted to do this. He always wanted to podcast. And he had asked me, hey, when I start doing this, would you come on the show? And I said, yeah. And then ultimately, it took me to episode 48 to actually agree. So Julian was not a happy camper with me at the beginning, because I would get to the point where I was going to do a podcast. I still wasn't sure what value I could add to podcasts. So I think that's one of the negative core beliefs that all of us have that drives us, is a little bit, hey, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy enough. I have no value. So why would I go on and do this? And I can remember the day I had canceled again. I was walking off the 14th green playing golf. So I really had nothing going on that time wise, but I told him, hey, I just don't have the time for it. And he just said, we had a knockdown drag out via phone, like F you, F you. Never going to do this, whatever. And then about a week later, I was in the bunker, doing that first podcast, which you've seen, which me and the All Black kind of talking about all the different things, a lot of the different clips that you've seen. Some of my more successful clips, or Julian's more successful clips, 26, 28, 30 million views on certain things. And I was like, whoa, I do have something to add. So that's kind of the story of a relationship. We've become really close, more like brothers. here in the last 2 years, and he's certainly elevated my business to a different level, and I'm hoping he tells me at least that Bustamante and I have helped kind of create him as a personality, and you see what he's doing and how he's doing it.
Well, yeah, because I started seeing your clips like all over the internet. I would go on mainly on Instagram more than anything else, and YouTube Shorts.
Yes.
But I would go on one of them, and next thing I know, I would see your bright, shiny face. In every single one of them. I mean, and they were definitely interesting clips, like about the search warrant, the public corruption search warrant that you did, right? Where the prosecutor, he called the lawyer, and they made adjustments basically to the search warrant. That was a big one. Julian is pretty good with clips in general, right?
Yeah.
So, but I've seen you guys a lot. I also saw you guys on the Concrete podcast too.
Yes. Yep. With Danny.
Yep.
With Danny Jones. Yep. Who I met through Julian. So, another guy who I blew off for an extended period of time, and ultimately, when I finally got down there, it was a great show. It was a great recording, and I've been on Danny now. I guess it's just my third time here most recently. So we'll make that a regular occurrence with the four of us as time goes on.
Are they all in New Jersey? Julian and
No, actually Danny's in Florida. So Danny's on the west coast of Florida, and where Andy's in Florida for now. And then Julian and I are both in Jersey. Jersey meets Florida. That's kind of what those podcasts look like, which is good. Works for us.
I remember Julian saying to you or somebody, I think it was Bustamante. He said to Bustamante, he's like, "Welcome to New Jersey," in their podcast.
Yeah.
No, and that's how we kind of connected too. When I first called you, when we first started scheduling this, we realized we had a lot in common.
Definitely, man. Yeah, Jersey guys, and a nice connection with friends and family, which was really cool. And yeah, for sure, man. I love it.
Yeah. So actually, that's one of the first things that's on my notes. So you and I knew people mutually that we didn't even know that we knew mutually.
No.
Yeah. So,
and I don't know that they know that yet. I think I was having coffee with my sister this week, and I told her, hey, I'm going to go on this podcast on Friday, and this guy George is good friends with. You're good friends with Colin. Is it Colin? Blake
well, they have. There's 3 kids. There's Mia, Colin, and Braden. I'm somewhat friends with Braden, and I've talked to Colin a couple times, but I did tell Braden. I didn't tell Colin. That was a funny conversation because I said to Braden, I'm like, "Do you know yet?" And then he's like, "No, what?" And I'm like, "Don't worry about it." And then he kept badgering me. He's like, "No." He's like, "Why are you being so weird? Why are you being so secretive?" And I'm like, "Fine, I'll tell you."
Yeah.
And then I explained to him, I'm like, "But don't tell your brother."
Yeah.
But now, it's really funny though. But
it is.
Yeah, because I really didn't, because that phone conversation was just really funny to me.
Definitely, yeah. And I've only met Brandon because he was riding by my house, and they live right up the street from me. So, so he was right. His dad does, and they were riding by the house, and I was sitting out on my deck, and I'm like, "Hey, what's going on?" And then he introduced me to Brandon. I hadn't known. I've never met Colin. I've never met Mia, but I feel like I know them because they spend a lot of time right up the street from me. And it's funny because so the connection for the audience is my niece, my sister's youngest, and their dad have been dating for quite a few years. So I know their dad. I know Jamie really well. Great dude. So I imagine the kids are pretty cool kids too.
They are indeed. Yeah, I know, because when I told Braden, he was like, "Oh, I'm really excited to be featured." He felt very honored. So, but yeah, no, that's
that's awesome.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I alluded it to Colin. I was just like, "Hey, make sure you watch the next podcast," and he's like, "Okay." Question, but he'll understand though now. He'll understand now.
Shout out to the Lakes. Shout out to the Lakes. Brought us together here.
Yeah. Speaking of things that brought us together here, you wanted to talk a little bit about your faith too.
Absolutely, man. So I think you and I had talked on the conversation maybe a week or so ago about my transformational journey, from raised a Catholic. I mean, I'm 60 years old, so it's interesting that you and I connected so well. You're a young man, but you're really driven. And I was just talking about you on another podcast. I had a podcast on Tuesday night where I talked a lot about my faith, and I talked a lot about your drive. And when I introduced you to that guy, because I think you guys would be, you guys get along well. He's a little older. He's in his late 20s, but he's kind of been where you've been and doing what you're doing. And yeah, so faith wise, I had an experience back in November where one of my best buddies from West Point's wife had passed after a 6-year battle with cancer. And I found myself just trekking out to the funeral. It was out in Lincoln, Nebraska. And I actually drove from New Jersey to Lincoln, Nebraska. It was it was a road held with a lot of self-reflection, and then picked up a buddy of mine in Chicago. And we kind of argued the whole way from Chicago to Nebraska about there being, God, there's no afterlife. God doesn't exist. And that's what I was saying to him. And he was just telling me, hey, you really take that chance. And I had been a strong Catholic, but never really had the faith I have now with relation to the word and to the Bible and to, having been forgiven. So therefore I could forgive because, the Lord has obviously forgiven us for all our sins, and we turn around and can forgive others. But I get to this particular wake, and I had told him, yeah, there's none of that. There's no God. There's none of this stuff and crap. And he said, well, with all the experiences you just told me about, all the bad things that are happened to your life, in your life, it sounds like not believing in God is really working out well for you. And I just chuckled, and I basically told him, F you, don't talk to me anymore. And we were staying together in a hotel that night, so it was a little bit tough. And we went to the wake that night as soon as we got there. And I walk into this wake. It's about 150 people waiting in the lobby. And I was told to sign in, and go ahead and sign in. They'll be opening the doors here in a second. The doors crush open, and my buddy comes running out. He doesn't go to anybody else in the crowd. Nobody. He comes right to me. He didn't know I was going to be there. He wraps his arms around me and says, I knew you would be here. And I said, there's something to this. And from that day on, November, more than a year ago now, it was November the 3rd, 2022. I've been following Jesus Christ and just finding such solace in it, and studying the Bible. And I just was the reason I was a little late to your pod is I was in a men's group breakfast. So I try to not blow that off, because I think it's important to stay with fellowship and those things. So it's no, the fact that I answered, I told you this, I don't answer. I get a lot of mail. I get a lot of people reaching out on LinkedIn and Instagram and things. And I don't answer many, but this dude that I did his on Tuesday night, and you are two of the guys that I just felt like I had to answer. There was a calling, a godly calling. So yeah, I'm honored that you allowed me to talk about that just now. It's important to me. And I know you and I have talked offline a little bit about that. And I know you believe strongly in that as well. You're a believer. And I think that's pretty cool.
Of course, man. Yeah. No, I'm glad that we connected with that.
Me too.
Yeah. No, but yeah, we connected with a lot of different things, like I said, both, with faith and just mutual friends and stuff. But we also, we both grew up in New Jersey, and also we wrestle. Or wrestled in your case.
Yes. Yes. Many years ago, you were wrestling. Like I told you, I was terrible, but I enjoyed the practices. I enjoyed having time with, good buddies, and really, it's been something that, even though it was for a short time in high school, I really found a lot of my drive, my focus came from those few days, that I wrestled in my life. That short season of my life. And it's helped me throughout my Army career. It's helped me throughout my national security career, my FBI career, and now more so with my own business, right? Because you really got it. You're doing it too, George. You're doing exactly what I'm doing now, but you're doing it at a much younger age, and you're figuring out, if I don't drive myself, nobody else is going to. And I think wrestling teaches us a lot of that. It shows us that we can do more with less. It shows us that discipline is still important no matter how old we get. And, I really admire, I really admire what you're doing and how you're doing it, because it's important for other people to see that your generation who catches a bad, kind of catches a bad rap. They're the generation of TikTok, they're the generation of the cell phone and instant gratification, and just go with the flow. Whatever the next topic of the day is, they kind of just conform to, and then work that through their own mind. You're not doing that. You're challenging yourself, and by doing that, you're challenging others, and you're challenging your generation. And man, I got nothing but tons of respect and admiration for what you're doing. So I appreciate you having me on here. It means a lot to me, and this is a long-term relationship, so we'll do this more for sure.
I appreciate that a lot. It means a lot
Oh,
to
hell
me.
yeah. Hell yeah, man.
Yeah. And speaking of the Army, I do remember you saying in a podcast that you graduated with Mike Pompeo, correct?
Yes, I did. I had the opportunity to, the first 6 weeks of West Point are what's called Beast Barracks. And Beast Barracks is a time for the academy to kind of break you down a little bit and weed you out. Now, thank God it's changed. Now we really do a great job of weeding out people before they get there, whether they want to go or they're going to be successful. My big thing is I'd rather you thrive at West Point than survive West Point, because surviving West Point's no way to go, right? So I was in a squad, which is a small number of people. There's only about a dozen of us with Mike Pompeo for my first 6 weeks at West Point. And during that time is when Mike began his walk with Christ. He was a Southern California guy. I think he was the product of two teacher parents. But he found God there during Beast Barracks, and it showed. He's a brilliant dude, but he's a funny guy, and he's a really good guy. And I'm hoping someday, I've been praying every day that at some point Mike comes out and runs for president. And if he doesn't run for president, I just hope that he's at a point where he can get back into a position in the government.
You froze.
I think I lost you for a second.
Yeah, you froze.
Okay.
That's all right. Keep going. You were saying, I heard you finish off at Mike should run for president.
Yeah. So, and I'm hoping if not president, at some point he's appointed back into a position with a cabinet, with an administration that'll help him to get back into what we need him for, right? So I think that's going to be important, really important for him and for us and for the country. He's a good man. He's a believer, and he's also a guy that has a brilliant mind and a mind for negotiating and keeping this country safe.
Yeah. I think from what I've seen of him, I think that he seems like a pretty good leader.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't really heard anything bad about him, but this would then lead into a very important topic that is completely not controversial, which is Donald Trump. So, he appointed Mike Pompeo because, that's a presidential appointed job of Secretary of State, Director of the CIA.
Yep.
So, number one, have you spoken to Mike at all outside of West Point, or?
Yeah. Oh yeah. We stayed in touch for a long time, and still are to an extent. Mike's got a busy schedule these days, where we used to be able to communicate pretty regularly. There's reasons why he can't communicate right now. And I don't know all those reasons, but I know he's out actively, in the communities, in the countries, helping people move things forward through his geopolitical brilliance. And he's got a couple real tight classmates that I'm friendly with too, that were his right-hand men during every piece of his career, business partners of his, and then ultimately involved with his run for Congress and run in his victory in Congress in Kansas. And then ultimately they were chiefs of staff and his general counsel, both at CIA and at Secretary of State. So he's doing great. Like I said, once in a while we'll exchange texts nowadays. He's also my other classmate who you'll know the name, Mark Esper, was the Secretary of Defense as well under Trump. So another good guy who's still out there serving the country. He's serving the country's best interests. So I got a pretty cool class. Pretty good bunch of guys and girls.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like it,
Yeah.
from what you were saying, it seems like pretty legendary,
It's a legendary class. Yeah. People ask us, what's the secret to 86? Why are you class 86? Why do you guys remain so close? Why do you interact? And there's two reasons. First off, we genuinely love each other. So there's no ego. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, or, an retired FBI agent. Everybody's gonna leave their ego at the door and talk about how we can help each other and how we can love on each other. Secondly, we lost, and I think you and I were talking about this a little bit. We lost a dude in combat in 2010, May 18, 2010. John McHugh was a colonel at the time. He was the highest-ranking individual killed during this war on terror, which, as you know, has lasted a long, long time, and we're just seeing the ending of that. Well, we'll never see the ending of that destruction and that collateral damage. But ultimately, John was killed 2010, and the class got together. He had 5 kids. The class got together and said, "How are we going to help these kids? How are we going to help Connie, his widow?" And they're strong believers, strong faith in God, and we were able to put together something where we were able to pay for those kids' college or their needs or what they needed. And then we realized, we could do a lot more. There's other kids that are out there that need our help, other parents that need our help of lost servicemen. So the charter became, interestingly enough, the charter became a challenge for us to raise enough money to pay for every single surviving child on the war on terror's college education. So we started something called the Johnny Mac Soldiers Fund, which we've raised over $40 million since 2015. So we will meet that challenge. The class 86 will meet that challenge with our donors and our friends and our partners. So I think that's the two reasons that the class 86 has stayed together so closely. We definitely have God's favor, and we're not backing off from that favor. We're not backing off from his requirements and his needs for us to do things for others. So it's an interesting little combination and great synergy between the class and what they do and the walk with God. It's very cool.
I think it's definitely a mix of things, because it's not like a good team like that comes around every, like super often. It seems like a very rare thing, with very good leaders that ended up doing pretty good things in the world that are still doing good things in the world. Like you said, Mike Pompeo, he was, like I said, I mean, the head of basically U.S. intelligence, right? And also someone who, dictated most U.S. foreign affairs, right? That's a pretty big deal. And I have a lot of respect for him in that sense. I actually didn't even know he was in West Point until you had mentioned it on your podcast. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But you guys, so when was the last time you guys talked? Like a week ago, a month ago, or?
I would say probably over the summer. We had some time, and I know he talked to my other 2 buddies that are real tight with him, and just talking about the future, what it might look like in his world, which I'm hopeful, and I'm praying for clarity for him and his wife Susan, and what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. The guy, if you read the guy's book, really good book that he wrote, I think it's called Never Give an Inch. It's called Never Give an Inch. And really amazing negotiations, amazing, always had his finger on the pulse of United States best interests. And, the guy's a threatened guy. The guy's got Iranian officials, ready to kill him at any point, because of a few things that he did that were needed to be done. And, so he's got to be careful. He's got to be very careful. He's got obviously full-time security on him. And at some point, I'm hopeful that he makes a move and comes out and back into public service. I know he will. I know if he's called to, he will be there. No doubt.
Yeah. So he doesn't do interviews often anymore, or
A lot of speaking, a lot of speaking engagements. He's trying to stay active and to stay current with real life situations and real world situations. So he's out there on the circuit for sure, definitely. Very protected, as far as where he's going and when. You don't see too much up front about where he's at or what he's doing anymore, which is a good thing. That's my world, and that's what I do for a living. And so I don't mind that he's not out there kind of advancing his locations or his time. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. He's being a good client. Not that he's my client, but for somebody, he's being a good client.
do you think that if or when Trump becomes president, right? Um, do you think that he would reappoint Mike Pompeo?
I do. I do. I definitely do. I think it would be a wise decision to reappoint Mike to a level that he needs to be at. But I think there's a lot of ifs between now and then as far as what's going to happen in this really a unique and probably unprecedented election cycle. We've got problems on both sides of the aisle. Significant problems.
Well, yeah. Well, we spoke a little bit about that over the phone, right? And that was with regards to your work in public corruption. And there was a lot of cases, right? Number one, we talked a little bit about Bridgegate, right?
Mhm.
And how I interviewed the judge in that case. And, but we also spoke about Trump and Biden and the idea of quid pro quo. I scratch my back, I scratch your back, you scratch mine.
Yep.
So what is exactly the problems when it comes to investigating someone like a governor or a president who, in the case of Trump, like he had the ability to fire the director of the FBI, right? Whatever reason he did that, right? So what's the problem with basically investigating your boss?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is my opinion. This isn't based on anything that I saw within my time in the FBI, but it's certainly right. Your opinion is certainly kind of crafted by your experiences for sure. I think we are at a point in this country where it's difficult to find an honest, I won't even say that. It's difficult to find someone that has the right motivation, the right platform that is led by humility and love of country. I think most of the folks that you're seeing running are prideful. They have huge egos. They definitely have things in their past that could cause issues. And so they're not able to walk into these positions and in utopia, I guess, in a perfect world, they would be able to walk in clean and have no affiliation, right? And so I think a lot of the American public was kind of, and wrongfully thought, well, Trump has his own money, right? So he doesn't need to take money from this one or that one, and he won't owe favors. That's nonsense. It doesn't matter who you are. You're going to always owe someone something. So on both sides of the aisle right now, you've got that significant kind of shoe ready to drop mentality. When's the other shoe going to drop on both of these guys, right? And clearly, clearly both of them have interests that are outside of the realm of the United States, right? Biden's kid, if that was Trump's kid, my personal opinion, we would have, those dudes would have been in jail a long time ago. However, Trump has a terrible reputation, in the world of business, in the world of politics, in the world of being a narcissist, which is a difficult kind of personality disorder to overcome. Many people just had trouble. Many of his closest advisors had trouble having him just shut his mouth. He just couldn't shut his mouth. And the same thing's going on in the courtroom right now. He just can't shut his mouth. And so my thought is he's really working his way out of being a potential candidate for president. Now, the polls, he's leading the polls miraculously well because Biden's administration has ripped this country to a new level of outright failure. So American people, for the most part, 90% of the American people, their view on the world is the last thing that they watched or heard on the national media, on that mainstream media control and give the American people only what they think the American people needs to hear, right? And 90% of people don't have any independent thought. It's like, yep, makes sense. We'll do this, we'll do that. Yeah, it sounds right. And you can watch a different channel and give the exact opposite opinion. And then they're on that side. Then they're on this side. So I think voting fraud, election fraud is alive and kicking. I think it will stay that way unless there's the ability to be able to document and to categorize votes. Until that happens, we got a problem. We got an opportunity for the bad guys. That's my thought on Trump. kind of beat around the bush a little there, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, I understand. Right. So this leads me into asking a little bit too, and this is a case that you mentioned, and this is from the state that I'm in, as well as, this is all about, stuff that from the state I'm in, because this is the state that you basically ran investigations for. So Bob Menendez, this guy has had multiple corruption cases against him, multiple, convictions of just different things, misuse of money, like bribes, etc. So what, from the perspective of the person who basically managed those cases, who is he? What is his deal exactly?
Hold on one second. I can get water. Hold that thought. Back on. See if we can get this straight, right, George. Sorry. Yeah. Right. So Menendez, if you think about it, this guy's really been under some form of investigation or indictment for the last 10 years, last decade, and he still remained strong and a person who still, for some reason or some form or fashion, has the influence in New Jersey, the state of New Jersey. And he's a Hudson County guy. So, grew up, I think, in Union, I'm going to say Union City. And I'm just looking because I forget his background, but I think he grew up in Union City. And he's been in office. I'm just looking now. The guy's 70 years old. He has been in office since 2006 as a senator. So right there, when you think about it, to have that much time sitting in, and I have all kinds of views on kind of how long, term limits, whether or not you're effective on certain committees. A lot of that comes with just your time here in New Jersey, serving as somebody who led the public corruption division for a long time in this district. And big thing for me is it's just recurrent, right? And we started this state doesn't have a great history with United States senators from the state. So if you go all the way back to Harrison Williams, which was way before your time, around the time that I got appointed or nominated to West Point, right? So there was, at the time, it was Senator Bill Bradley, who was a former New York Knick and a great basketball player, went to Princeton, played there. And you had a guy named Harrison Williams, who was the senator that was caught up in a FBI investigation called Abscam. And Abscam was, he was actually bribed by those acting like Saudi Arabian princes on a yacht out in the Hudson River. He was bribed in order to move these guys through in a business deal. So it started there, and then it went into Bob Torricelli. So there's a little history on the senatorial kind of corruption that's taking place in Jersey. Went to Bob Torricelli, who was a longtime sitting United States senator from New Jersey, who took money from a Korean businessman and promised that businessman that he would in fact reach out on behalf of that businessman to the North Korean government. Now think about how absurd that is. And this man, David Chang, who's passed, became the source for the New Jersey FBI in order to go after Bob Torricelli. Very, very clear fact patterns. Very, very great and powerful and abundant evidence that showed, in fact, Torricelli not, and quid pro quo is simple. I provide you with some type of bribe, some type of financial need, and you in return take official action on my behalf as a appointed or an elected official. Chang asked for his interaction or his intercession with the North Korean government, which Torricelli didn't have. No one had any relationship with the North Korean government. The only guy who's ever met with the North Korean government is Donald Trump, right? Because Mike Pompeo actually facilitated that with his negotiating skills. So Torricelli tells this guy, yeah, give me a boatload of money, cash, cars, suits, antiques, trips, hair plugs. Give me all that. And in return, I'll make sure that I get with the North Koreans and figure out a way to get your grain deal put in place. Absurd. Like absolutely absurd. Carry that on to the little troll, as I call him, Bob Menendez, because he's a troll. He's a little punk, right? Carry that forward to Menendez, who I think in the first case it had to do with a good buddy of his who was a, I want to say, was he a dentist or was he an orthodontist or something along those lines? But he had interest in the Caribbean or in South America or in Central America, and he needed Menendez's help in order to move some product back and forth on like a trade route. And again, Menendez, cash, hookers, cocaine, everything you could possibly imagine. It goes to trial, again, just as strong of a bit of evidence than anything you've ever seen. In any case, much stronger than the kind of the BS that's going on in the Trump case, much stronger than that. And somehow or another, a federal judge, sitting judge, throws out the indictment. Mid-trial, throws the indictment out. That never happens, ever. And Menendez skates. Well, here we are in 2023, and Menendez once again is under investigation and under indictment. In this case, he comes out immediately and says, oh, that cash, yeah, I kind of hid that. I hid the cash or whatever the bullshit excuse he has this time. So this is a very, it's just normal. It's normal with political elected and appointed officials to be under some type of investigation or indictment. You joke around, but it seems like just as they get into office, there's a case open against them. It's crazy. It's crazy that we have to monitor, as the Department of Justice has to monitor that stuff so closely. Now, what kind of I think puts pressure, or kind of not puts pressure, but kind of adds to the mix, is the fact that the FBI right now doesn't have the grandest reputation because of our leadership and because of our mistakes, and not just because of our mistakes, but because of our inability to own those mistakes and say, yeah, we probably did some things that we shouldn't have done. And so, and I'm glad. I loved working for the Bureau. I have nothing but a great amount of respect for the men and women who do the job that they do every day, but we are broken, and someone needs to come in and fix that organization. And Chris Wray certainly is not the answer, and Paula Bate certainly isn't the answer. And the bozos that are at the top of that chain are just brutal. That's a long-winded answer with a cough and a choking session in the middle, but it's kind of where I'm at.
This is a little bit of a hypothetical, but do you think Mike Pompeo would be a great director of the FBI?
Oh, I think he'd be great at whatever he would do. I mean, my guy's a guy named Jim Diorio, who you can check out online, former assistant director of our critical incident response group, SIRG, which runs our HRT, our hostage rescue team, along with just about everything else, every SWAT team, every tactical team. Yacon's history is amazing. He's a Class 87 guy from West Point. He's a Silver Star recipient for Black Hawk Down. He's the guy that dropped the two Delta guys off on the pile. An amazing dude, and he'd be the answer. He'd be the answer to the FBI. He would come in there and zip it up. And I've already volunteered to be the number 2. Come in and be the hatchet man. Get rid of all the garbage that's at the top, all the sexual harassers, all the people that are just boobs, absolute boobs, sitting collecting a paycheck doing nothing. So we need to straighten that organization out. And it's all at the top. Rank and file, lights out. Best people you ever work with. Amazing. But the leadership is crap. It's all political nonsense. Good old boy network. Needs to go away. Angry. I'm a little angry there, huh, George?
No, I understand it. I understand. Yeah. So this raises an interesting question now about different politicians and different people and better leadership, right? Because you of all people would know there's a difference between a politician and a leader, right?
Yes.
A politician is just someone who has the position. A leader is actually someone who does the job, right?
Yep. There you go.
So there has been talks about, this what's it called? These two guys that are not Trump and Biden, that being Robert Kennedy and Vivek Ramaswamy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any thoughts on them or any other political candidates that you think would be good leaders? Or
I know more about RFK Jr. than I do about Vivek. I think I've heard, I haven't done independent research, but I plan to. I've heard some things about Vivek's family that don't give me a warm and fuzzy. But I don't know anything. I can't really talk to detail. I like Kennedy. I think he would be somebody that's bright and refreshing for the future. However, that being said, he's no spring chicken, although he looks great. And he's got differing views than the majority of the folks that are out there, and that's going to hurt him. That's going to crush him. Plus, he's a Kennedy, so it's going to be an issue. You're going to have issues with security and the things that go hand in hand with that. His campaign manager is, I think, what's the guy's name? Kucinich. He's the former congressman from Ohio. I think he might have been even the Cincinnati or Cleveland mayor. He's a lefty Libby. He's not he's not somebody I love. We actually this is funny. Me and Bustamante put a proposal forward for Kennedy's security right before the security allowed a dude to get on the security team with a gun who could have shot and killed him. So they need help there. This dude doesn't even have I don't want to talk about it because it's not right. But look, trust me, RFK Jr. is in harm's way every single minute of the day, and nobody's doing a damn thing about it. So good luck. Good luck.
We can only hope for the best.
That's it. I pray every day that he's okay, because we put in a great proposal, and they never even responded back to us. So you got what's his name? The dude who's doing the security, the writer of the Gift of Fear, whatever that Gavin DeBecker. DeBecker's doing his security. Nice job, guys. You allowed a dude into your security team without checking him out. Well done. Well executed. Keep up the good work.
To be fair to DeBecker, the Kennedy. DeBecker is the same guy that does security for Jeff Bezos, right? And a lot of other people. So
remember what happened with Bezos when his chief of security on DeBecker, the Secret Service person, let people in the office? DeBecker's just a businessman. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing or how he's doing it. So, and the people that work for him are miserable, every one of them, because I know a bunch of them. He doesn't pay them well. He doesn't do anything for them. So he needs to stop writing books and start securing people. That's just my blast at DeBecker.
He's more bark than bite.
Yeah.
He so it's a talk is cheap sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, look at his background. That's all I got to say.
Right. Now, obviously, we're a little short on time, and so I do want to get to this part, right? These are two cases you wanted to get to, right? Mm-hmm. You wanted to talk about the athletic director for Rutgers and former U.S. attorney Faith Hochberg. You didn't even want to tell me about it. You want me to be surprised. So what's the deal with both of them?
All right, so let's talk about Tim Pernetti, right, who was the director of athletics at Rutgers during the time when there was a coach there, Mike. I think his name's Mike Rice. I think that's right. Mike Rice was the basketball coach at Rutgers, and before your time. But what happened was, Rice was a dude who was caught on video abusing players, like verbally and physically abusing players during practices. So what happened, because it became public, they had to take action immediately. Somebody had to take action at Rutgers. Now, at the time, the big push, Chris Christie was the governor. Okay, the big push, and he was the governor after he became the United States attorney. So he's corruption fighter, quote unquote, corruption fighter, and then became the governor of the state. So at that time, the president, Barkey, I think his last name was Barkey, Dr. Barkey, the president of Rutgers, right, was trying to merge, or wanted to merge, Rutgers Medical School with UMDNJ. So wanted to make Rutgers kind of the controlling factor behind all education in New Jersey. And there's a big reason for that, because there's money involved, right? Always about following the money, or cash. They look at this situation with Rice and they say, we have to do something about this. What are we going to do? Now, what should have happened, because Pernetti took that videotape, brought it to the president of Rutgers University, and Barkey, and said, hey, we got a problem here. What are we going to do about it? The guy just went to Christie, who was the governor, and said, hey, if I get involved in this, I'm going to get fired, because this is under my watch. All right. But then the deal to merge the medical schools is not going to go through. It's not going to happen. What do? They fire Pernetti. They fire the athletic director. Christie has the athletic director fired. After being United States attorney, he's supposed to be this corruption fighter. He's right in the middle of corruption. That's not the first time, because the second time is during Bridgegate, when he orders to have that bridge shut down in order to punish the mayor of Fort Lee, because he didn't like him, because he didn't support him on his campaign. So the fact that Chris Christie's even standing on a stage again as a presidential candidate, by the way, he's running fourth, only because there's the fifth guy is, whoever the hell the fifth guy is. I can't even think. Scott, Tim Scott, right? The fact that he's even standing on a stage is a farce. It's an absolute fraud. And that's case one. So if you think about that, corruption working best in order to fire a guy who was doing a great job at Rutgers. The biggest thing that ever happened to Rutgers athletics was moving them into the Big Ten. It makes them $40 or $50 million a year. That supports every scholarship that comes through Rutgers athletics, every one, without taking an extra dollar in tuition. Now, they do take an extra dollar in tuition, but I was saying it wouldn't have to. Pernetti brings that to the university. He brings it to the university, and they fire him. And nobody ever pursued that case. So I think that was our point when you and I talked. No one pursues these cases. They just let them run out. So that's one, right? That's one, and that's a travesty. That's an absolute travesty. It still bothers me inside today as I sit here talking to you. It's still one of my failures. One of my failures to not bring that home. Second case that we talked about a little bit was Faith Hochberg, who is the United States Attorney, District of New Jersey, who had a husband who was, I believe, a cardiac surgeon. So cardiologist by trade, but he did all the procedures, right? So all the interventions, whether it be through angioplasty or actual open heart surgery, all those things. So a huge patient load, big medical practice, but very involved. We get information back this had to be early 90s, early to mid 90s, mid to late 90s. We get information that says that Dr. Hochberg, the sitting United States attorney's husband, is double billing or billing for services not rendered. Straight up healthcare fraud, as clear as the day is long. So we are ready to search. We have videotapes, George. We have videotapes of this dude, this doctor, sitting in the islands, sitting in the Bahamas or in St. Thomas, St. Lucia. We have him sitting there while he's billing insurance companies for seeing patients those days. I'm not talking one patient. I'm not talking something that would be a little slap on the wrist and, hey, don't do that anymore. I'm talking 80 or 90 patients a day. So we put together our team to go search his house. As we're sitting in the driveway, and she is the sitting United States attorney, one of those people who worked for her calls us and says, the search is off. Don't search the house. And we don't. And nobody says anything. Straight up corruption. As bad as it gets. As bad as it gets. So those are two cases that are disgusting. And if you don't think that stuff's still going on today, I got to plug in real quick. Hold on. Sorry about I'm not prepared, George.
It's all right.
I'm usually very prepared, but not today. Um, if you don't think that stuff occurs every single day still, you got your head in the sand. So those are two significant cases that I thought kind of prove specific issues to the District of New Jersey for sure, but widely prevalent across the Department of Justice, which is why we're getting a terrible reputation. There's nobody that's just doing the job for the job. No one. No one. On the leadership side. Rank and file, terrific. Leadership side, crap. Crap.
Well, what's it called? Part of you saying leadership side is garbage, it's not good, right? A lot of people tend to say, well, if only this guy was in office, or, well, it was better when this guy was in office. What do you think of those people? Because a lot of people, will say, oh, but when Trump was in office, compared to Biden, we didn't have as much of an issue. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's any substance to that in my head, from my perspective. I think what it comes down to is doing the job for the job itself, not for your own personal gratification / advancement. So a lot of times we play off that pride and ego, the pride versus the humble public servant, right? So, and we have guys like that and girls like that have worked in leadership positions that are just have no pride, no ego. They just do it because it's the right thing to do, right? And I think we don't have enough of that. So it wouldn't matter necessarily what person's in office. It's the humility within the person to be a servant leader. Like I look at Andy Bustamante, who runs Everyday Spy, right, and who I'm friendly with and who I'm been on podcasts with. Andy, at his root, at his the bottom of his heart and the top of his mind is about protecting the United States government, not United States citizens and its government from any wrongdoing, from any issues of destruction or issues of infiltration, any of those things. And he truly believes that, and he works that way. Those guys and girls there's not enough of those kind of people. There's not enough Bustamantes in the world. There really isn't. And that's the issue. It wouldn't matter if you were a prideful, egotistical person, it wouldn't matter who you were working for, what administration, because that's the way you're going to act. That's where your default lies. Your default lies in pride. We need more humble public servants again. And we used to have those people. We really did. Louis Freeh, the first director of the FBI that I worked for, that was that guy. Honestly, that was that guy. Mike Pompeo is director of CIA. That was that guy. No pride, no ego, just get the job done. Behind closed doors, nobody needed to know, didn't need any accolades. He wrote his book because, the American people wanted to know. And you have to kind of brag about yourself a little bit in your own memoirs. Otherwise, it would be ridiculous because people will be like, well, why the hell did he write a book? So I think that's a great question that you ask. But my personal opinion is it wouldn't matter who you're working for if you have that differing view of, pride versus humility.
Yeah, I mean, people that are not good people will remain not good people no matter where they are. A lot of the times.
Exactly right. It's exactly right. Definitely.
Yeah, so like I said, you're short on time. I don't want to, take too much longer. So the last question I'm going to ask you is, before we get off and before we talk after the show, between everything you've ever done, right? Two things. Number one, what's the biggest thing you've learned about human nature? And two, would you do it all again?
I'll answer the last one first, and in a minute, I'd start this afternoon. I'd start right when we got off the phone. I wouldn't do anything different. So I think that is, to me, that's just a no-brainer. Like, yes, I would do it all again tomorrow. I would do it the same way. I would take advantage of the lessons learned and be better. So that's one. And that's the last question. And then For me in the human nature question, I think a lot of it is comes down to this, and this has struck me in the last couple of years of my life. But forgiven people forgive people. All right, and that's a profound thought, but it's really not. So we've been forgiven in our life, so we should be able to forgive others. And people are not capable of doing that, not because it's not human nature. It's because their ego gets in the way. Their ego gets in the way, right? They don't think soulfully. And I know this is a little deep, but it's religious, and it's the Christian walk. So I've found that every problem, every person that's made mistakes, and whether it be mistakes that are just in family and you realize, oh boy, I shouldn't have done that, or it's a major mistake that could cause issues of national security, right? Every one of them, if you got down to the root of it, and I've interrogated people, I've interviewed people, I've prosecuted people, I've vindicted people. I think every one of them, if they took away that feeling of pride, that feeling of ego, and went more to the humility side and the bigger picture, they'd be much happier folks. And I could give you examples of both, but we could do that. We could do that another time. And what I'll tell you is, I'd love to do this again with you and get a little deeper. I think you do a great job. And today I'm just under the gun a little bit to get some other things done, but I've enjoyed this tremendously, and I hope we can do it again.
Absolutely, man. You're welcome on anytime you want. Just give me a call. I'm going to give you my personal cell number after this. I'm going to give you a text on it. I forgot to before. But yeah, let's talk a little bit after the show. Any closing words?
Yeah, I mean, just stay safe. Trust your intuition out there. The world is getting crazier by the minute. Try to know the fact that you're not alone here, and there's people that can help you. So people who are out struggling or need help, reach out. Be helpful to other people.
I will. All right.
All right, brother. Great job, man. Proud of you, and I really enjoyed this. This is my favorite podcast so far. You do a great job.
I appreciate that a lot. Thank you so much. All right, let's talk a little bit after the show, right?
Sounds like a plan. All right. Stay well.